Welcome to my outdoor workshop. My name's Brad Eilering, and this is my teaching presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use a Japanese pole saw, and we'll involve, we'll, we'll talk about safety as well as best practices for that. But first, I'd like to also interject a little about this burial that we have in front of you. As teaching as part of the pandemic, of course, wearing a mask, and this barrier is my prototype for a barrier that can be used in the classroom. And it's a piece of acrylic, 30 by 48, that has been set into an aluminum frame. The aluminum frame is bent into configuration first, and then the plexiglass fits into that. It does have a wood base as well that supports this frame. And the wood base here is made of white pine, 1 inch by 3/4 inch white pine. And today we're going to be learning techniques that I used this morning to make this base. And my tool of choice is this Japanese pole saw, which when you pick up the saw, it is going to have safety guards on it. So let's first talk here about safety. So any tool is going to be sharp and can cut you. So you want to be very careful with the way you handle it and the way you use it. In terms of PPE, important to have eye protection at all times. Important to have foot protection, leather boots, good way to go. And blue jeans is a really good choice for the pants as well. And a cotton shirt, something that's a little tighter than this. Generally I wear a t-shirt. Today I'm wearing a shirt like this, but fairly tight fitting cotton shirt. So let's begin with the lesson. And first we can talk about the Japanese pole saw. So you notice it has a long handle and it has a long blade. The blade is rather flexible, and with this saw and with many of them, it has a coarse cut side where the teeth are further apart and have more of an angle to them, side to side, and a fine tooth side in which the teeth are smaller, closer together. I generally use fine tooth for the kind of work that I'm doing. And the blade is such that it becomes an extension of your arm. So to keep the wrist straight and the finger extended on the blade is a good way to go. The positioning, I would take 1 foot back and cut in a manner similar to this. Keep in mind that this is a pull saw, meaning that the teeth are positioned and angled back so it cuts on the pull stroke. That's completely opposite from other tools that we use in America or Western conventions. So this is a Japanese. We cut on the pull and then not as much force on the push. So now let's talk a little about the workbench. I have Irwin quick grip clamps here. These are awesome for holding your workpiece. Since we're outside, a piece of plywood over sawhorses in this lovely garden, and we're talking about how to make a crosscut in wood. The wood, the species here is white pine. It's rather soft wood, but you can see that the grain extends in that direction. So crosscut means we're cutting across the grain, and a rip cut would be cutting with the grain. But today we're learning how to crosscut. I recommend a piece of scrap wood on your table that you can cut into to not mar up your workbench. So when all of us art students working in 3D design or our sculpture classes, or even making stretchers or picture frames, we have dimensions that we want the finished piece to be. So that's generally the way it starts. But for this demonstration, I'm using my square, another handy tool, to measure with, and I tend to do this for short items, short lengths. 5 inches I've marked it with the pencil, and next thing I'll do is go back to the square and put the square against the edge, and now draw a line, which is a perpendicular line across that wood. Setting the workpiece down, we take our Eilering clamp, and now we're going to fasten the workpiece to the table and also to the 2x4, the block and the table. We're going to clamp all of that together. So that's nice and tight. Many accidents, the accidents that happen, and not many accidents occur, in my presence, but accidents can happen at any time. And when they do, it's generally because the workpiece is not well fastened, or you haven't thought about what you're doing, and you're doing, something that would not be considered a best practice. So here, this demonstration is all about best practices. So especially when you're learning to use a pole saw, it's best to have a guide. So this piece of wood is just another scrap that I had laying around, and I'm going to use a third Eilering clamp here and attach that piece of wood so that it is right on the line that I drew. Notice that the clamp is pulled off of this edge. This now becomes my guide. So now we have our workpiece attached, a guide, and we can pick up the saw. So the saw is, a saw like this, it's a little tricky to get started. But, we've already talked about positioning, and here we are. And what I am doing is I've tilted the saw up to catch the leading edge, and I'm just using short strokes to begin cross-cutting. And I am being mindful of how the wood is cutting, and I am looking to make that first slight cut all the way across. So at this point, I've achieved the direction and I've achieved the groove for the saw to cut in. And now I can, after achieving that first cut, which goes down about a 1/16 of an inch, and being mindful of keeping my fingers away from the blade, I can continue cutting. And now, when I continue cutting, I am using a longer stroke, and I'm feeling the teeth of the blade cut into that wood on the pull stroke, and I'm lightly returning the saw so that I don't dull the blade on the push stroke. And here we go. Things are looking good. Cutting into the 2x4 slightly. We want to cut all the way through, and I think that we've achieved a cut all the way through. We can release the clamp, and here is our 5-inch long piece with a cross cut at either end. So that looks good. All good here. Release the clamps, and the next comment that I have is let's always clean up after ourselves and try to keep our space organized as well. I've got a broom right here, and come back, clean, and now we're ready for the next cut, whatever that may be. But to give you an idea of what's involved in making the base for our pandemic teaching shield, this type of joint is where we cut halfway through the wood and then use a chisel for removing. That's called a lap joint. So one piece can fit into the other, and if we make this cut here, they will go down in there and truly lap, as this connection indicates here. That's the way this was done. This type of cut, which is used at either end, is simply a groove joint. A couple of passes with the saw, then cleaned out with the chisel. Thank you for being here. I'm sure you have questions. One thing to keep in mind that if you need to take a break and walk away, you want to make sure all of your tools are safe, and I would recommend safe in case someone else comes up. with your saw. I would recommend putting the blades back on your saw before you take a break. And here we go. Blades are back on. Teeth protected. Cleaned up, organized. We can take a break and come back and cut our next piece. So thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to the interview and meeting with all of you. Thanks again.